Let's face it, parenting is the most important job on earth. Every day presents a stack of different challenges, and more often than not, the answer is outside of the box. On this podcast, we will offer proven strategies, interview pioneers in education, give insights into how to be successful parents, and even share our imperfect experiences of being parents ourselves. We're all in on this journey, and we will span the globe to find out what is working and who has the answers. This is the Sound Foundations for Parenting podcast. Here are your hosts, Darren McCarthy and Brian Powers.
Welcome to the Sound Foundations for Parenting podcast. I'm Brian Powers.
And I'm Darren McCarthy. Today we had the great privilege of going down south, meeting up with Dr. Pam Bruening, founder and CEO of DeeperDive Learning. She has a rare background where she had 30 years of experience in the professional field of education, but she started in the classroom, which I always love, and then she worked her way to administrative, and now she's running DeeperDive Learning. What a great meeting it was, right, Bryce? We learned a lot, didn't we?
Yeah, she left education and is now focusing on a solution based on, some of the things that she took away from there, that needed help.
Yeah, absolutely. Falls right in line with our philosophy of going to the solution. And there's a lot of solutions that we learned today, but there's also a lot of solutions on their website and on their online trainings. What'd you get out of this, Brian?
Yeah, I got that everybody has to be involved, and kind of, what we're going through now with my older guy, it's like, it's got to be a team approach, and we're lucky that, finally the school we're in, the teachers he has, they're involving us more, and that's basically what she talked about. She's like, families need to learn too, and I feel like there was, I said in the episode that there's no playbook to turn to. What our moms and dads and folks that raised us did is totally different these days, and we need easily accessible playbook that we can turn to.
One of the great things that about her approach is that she starts out with the ideal. So for example, in one of her trainings, she talks about the habits of a successful student and a supportive family. So if you start out with the ideal, you kind of know what you're kind of working towards. And a lot of times people use like what they call the discovery method, where it's just a series of questions and you don't necessarily have the answer. So it's kind of anxiety producing. This is kind of like, no, here's what it looks like. Here's the habits of a successful student and a supportive family. And then she goes on to talk about the power of modeling and, choices and decisions and consequences. And this is just in one training that they offer. It's called The Gift of Structure. And I think it's, aptly titled, The Gift of Structure. Wouldn't we all love that?
The kids ask for it. They want it.
They want it. And we don't want it because we feel like we are too structured as it is. But the things we need sometimes the most are the things we fight the most. And so it was, that piece was a great takeaway. And there were some other pieces, when we talked about family engagement. And, when we had Gail Moyers on, they talked about a study about getting the family together and how having the family together for dinner and having that interaction increases vocabulary. And there's a whole study behind that. And she was very familiar with the study, which I thought was fantastic. And then she also kind of pointed to this training that they offer, which is the family engagement course. And so that had a series of similar concepts like expectation, consistency, follow through. So they use these trainings and they're getting the whole community involved. The police officers, the firemen, like the whole community gathers around and says, this is the place to go to get the family to unite, to be engaged, and kind of empower the whole concept of bringing the family back together.
Yeah, I mean, she talked about how they sold the Family U product to a whole district, and they were kind of opening it up to the rest of the town. It almost didn't sound real. It sounded like, some type of movie. But yeah, I mean, you go back to that statement, it takes a village to raise a child. And it's like, that it sounds, everybody has to be invested. And I think the biggest thing that she talked about that I liked was that, you could access the content was easy to access and, very user friendly. And when, especially, we know we've got a crazy schedules, we want to be able to, grab and go with this stuff and implement it as quickly as possible.
Fantastic. So without further ado, let's move forward right into our conversation with Dr. Pam Bruening.
So here we are with Dr. Pam Bruening from DeeperDive Learning. Really happy to have you as our guest, Dr. Pam. Maybe to start, you could give us kind of a little bit of your background and tell folks that are listening, a little bit more about you.
Thank you. I started out as a teacher and wanted to make a difference in the lives of students, and was able to do that in elementary, middle school, and high school settings, alternative school settings. And then I decided to go and move into administration. So I was a school-based administrator and a district-based administrator, and primarily really worked in the area of response to intervention or providing multiple support systems for students, both academic and behavior. And I left there really to kind of venture into the business world to try to really focus on a solution. And it really started with educators, trying to help them get greater learning to be able to incorporate into the classroom for greater student achievement. So that's kind of how I started, but obviously families has been a big part of that because they're one of the primary stakeholders.
Yeah, one of the things that really was impressive about Dr. Pam's background, Brian, was that she was an administrator that had the teaching experience, and a lot of administrators kind of go into the business and they get there's so many requirements on keeping up with your education that they kind of bypass the teaching piece and go right into administration. And so she's got that strong background in both worlds, and then she brought that into kind of the private sector, working with the public schools to integrate all that knowledge that she had from the classroom and from the administrative perspective. So it's really a unique background.
Nice. Yeah, and you're 100% right. You don't often see that foundation that you have in teaching, often in the higher level administrative folks, in education. Great. Maybe just talk to us a little bit more on, the motivation to kind of come out of education, but still stay in that field and focus more on a solution. Because that's kind of the real passion that Darren and I have behind this as well. He had the background there as well, and he's kind of back looking for a solution as well. And I have a young family, so I'm always looking for solutions when it comes to that. So maybe talk a little bit about what motivated you.
Okay. I think everybody in education, the ultimate solution, or we're all really seeking, first of all, what is the best or easiest way to make the strongest learning gains. So when we're talking about students, of course, we want them to make the best gains possible. And we know that the research tells us and experience tells us that all stakeholders need to really be involved. So you have schools and all the educators doing a lot of work to prepare and get things ready and try this method and that method. And you have students who work hard and show up, and if the teacher is doing a great job, then the student can do a great job. And one of the areas that I always felt like we neglected quite a bit were really families, and communities are a big part of that as well. Of course, our families make up the communities, so that's kind of, those two things are really very tied together. So I think in education, we're always searching for to be better. We're learners, and that's part of it. We always want to be better, try something different, try something that might work better. And life's changing, and with technology, just, the changes that really promotes in our lives really necessitate that problem-solving kind of, framework for all of us, mindset.
Yeah, one of the things that we've talked about in previous conversations is that parents are so busy kind of with their lives, running around, going from sport to sport to homework to tutors, to like so much going on, that it's hard to understand, to even kind of capture the moment and be there to observe what the challenge might be for the child. And so, one of the things that was impressive about your work at DeeperDive Learning is that you have a training module for family engagement. Can you talk to us a little bit about that piece?
Yeah, sure. And actually, we have a whole library of which we call Family U. And it's a whole library of family engagement topics and little mini modules, so to speak, that cover lots of things. So we do have one that is called Family Engagement, and then we have others that really specialize on certain things like teens and social media, or how to read with your child at home, building reading fluency at home, building math fluency at home, providing the gift of structure, which really talks about structure at home that would enable good attendance and, healthy living and healthy eating and things like that. Increasing student focus or understanding the teen brain. Those are all topics and many, many more. But the purpose of that is we were realizing the same thing, as you said, as you just mentioned, the busy families running here and there. Of course, we have technology now like we never have before. And so we wanted to make something that was really mobile ready and something that was really interactive, short, sweet, really to the point, so that it really captures people's attention, allows them to do a little bit of learning along the way. So whether you're sitting at a doctor's office waiting on somebody or at the practice field waiting for your child, you have an opportunity to just dive right in there and do some things. And because we realize, with the world changing the way it is, families need to learn too. And they don't have as much time, as you had mentioned. That intentional use of time for building healthy relationships is so important for our kids, for them to be able to be successful in our world.
It's, it's big part of it is the playbook. There's no playbook. And I feel like if you, you turn to the way our parents did it, it's completely different. I mean, there really aren't many things. There are some foundational things that we could utilize, but there's not, and there's not that playbook to turn to. And like you said, clear and concise playbook. There's a lot out there, obviously, but there's nothing out there that, under the time constraints we're all under and the busy schedules, that we could turn to and say, like, this is really going to give me some actionable items that I'll see, putting the work in, obviously, but I'll see make a difference.
Exactly. And, the other kind of objective for us was to try to prompt them to interact with their children. And as kind of silly as that may sound, we all interact, but maybe not in a way that's focused toward learning something together even. And so there are activities that are embedded within that actually sometimes ask them, hey, ask your teen this, together talk about this, and then upload a response or something like that. Because they can find out something that they may not have thought to even ask their teen or their child, as they're interacting and doing these things. So it's all part of that kind of growth and learning. Yeah.
Often you're so engrossed in the moment. I find that with my wife and I, sometimes I'll share an article or two with her and it'll just, kind of hit that light bulb, something that you turn it on, that's something that you didn't think of, just because you're living it every day. I don't have a teen yet, but I heard you say something about figuring out the teen brain. Maybe, man, you might be onto something to figure that out.
That's a lot of research right there.
Yeah.
Hey, and there is. I learned, unfortunately, my teen was already grown up into the 20s when I figured some of those things out. But yeah, it's vital.
Yeah. Go ahead, Darren.
It's one of the things that I think is we always talk about executive function, in the sense that, like, you don't know where to start. So where does a parent begin to take all this stuff on? And so the beauty of what you've created in this online platform is, okay, I can start here, and it will walk me through in a nice kind of fluid manner, step by step within that concept. So if you talk about family engagement, for example, she goes into nice detail about, do this step, then here's some practical strategies, and here's some different approaches. Like you said, there's some interactivity in there, and I think that's some things that are missing, is that because I think parents are kind of inundated with so much really good marketing for really mundane kind of products. So if they finally get the energy they need, that this is going to be it, this is the thing I need to spark it, and then they get there and it doesn't offer practical solutions and kind of a step-by-step thing. So you guys did a really nice job with that.
Thank you. I mean, one of the things that we really wanted to make sure to do is make it so that it was personalized. And it is personalized. So, 5 different people could take the same learning experience and kind of come out that the information is the same, but how they apply it could look totally different. As far as, their children may be different, they're living in a different situation or whatever. And so it allows them to personalize it as they go and interact with it. And so it is more than just reading an article. That is a start, but it forces them to kind of interact a little bit in order to really think through things. And we know that that's the process of learning. And I would say that was probably the primary thing. We wanted to embed that learning process within so that they're actually, and not just they're experiencing it in a deeper way, so that they're automatically applying it to their own lives as they go through.
Can you kind of give us some examples on the maybe we'll talk a little bit about the structure side, because I see you have, the gift of structure is one of, part of that Family U course that folks can buy. So let's talk a little bit. Can you give an example of kind of what's part of that, those lessons?
Yeah, sure. It really starts out talking about the habits of a successful student and a supportive family. And that's just a way to really think about that whole structure in general, or just providing some structure at home. Then it goes on and talks about, attendance and homework and how those kind of structures are important in our lives, or the lives of students, for them to be successful at school. How parents can set their expectations, provide consistency and follow through with whatever expectations, and so they're experimenting with doing some of that. It talks about modeling and parent consistency, which is, challenging because we're all human, and it's hard sometimes to put yourself away when you're really focused on being consistent for your child's sake. Talks about choices and decisions, consequences, and how to do that in an appropriate manner. Supporting literacy, the difference between enabling and empowering, which is a really important thing.
Sure.
Learning how to praise appropriately so that you're maximizing the growth of your child, rather than setting them up to have a more fixed mindset. So it does talk a little bit about helping to develop growth mindsets for your child or with your child.
This is all in one module, right, Dr. Pam?
Yeah, it's all in one little module course, 3 little modules within one course.
Wow.
Yep.
Yeah. I just know with us at home, I've got an 8, 6, and 3-year-old, and they almost, strive or cry out for the structure. I think back to the holiday break, and my wife and I were kind of wondering what was, why they were so thrown off. And I think it was really the fact that they thrive off of that structure that comes from the, weekly schedule of, school and extracurriculars and those types of activities.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And we see that in school all the time where, they come back in and you can tell they haven't had structure for a while. But when we know our children thrive with that, we need to provide it. And all, we're all on that spectrum. So, all of us are adults too. So some adults need more structure than others. Some children need more structure than others.
Sure.
Yeah, that's what kind of went out, because you have a 30-year experience. I wonder if we can get a little bit global in a sense that, like from your beginning of your career to now, like how do you think how has the family dynamic changed, where these things are becoming more and more essential to kind of get back to the root thought processes and walk people through these really basic, I wouldn't say basic needs, but fundamental needs? What do you think what's causing this?
Well, I think, there's a variety of things. I think in some ways we have a lot more single parents than we ever have before. And I actually was a single parent for a good part of my life. And so a lot of times single parents are working 2 jobs, so they're busy. So providing structure for the family and, coming in and out, making sure everybody has dinner and that kind of thing, sometimes is a challenge. I think technology has brought many, many wonderful things, but it's also brought many challenges too, where it's too easy to, put somebody on the phone or an iPad and not really interact with people. And so we see that, it used to be when I was a young parent, it was, don't put them in front of the TV too much, because then you'll lose some of that interaction. And it was really true. So I always tried to make sure that my son had something to do with his hands at the same time as he was watching anything. So he would be busy in his mind. And I think that's a lot of it. I think it's the way our society has unfortunately kind of evolved into, but it just makes that more challenging, and we have to be more intentional, I think.
Well, and it's, sometimes as parents, the things we need the most are the things we fight the most. I know I know if I'm doing well with my 8 and 10-year-old, actually, no, he's 11 now, a couple weeks ago. I fight the concept of like, I need you guys to get ready for bed at 7. I need you to do, first come home from school and then do this. And then it's a really clear schedule. But conceptually, if I can do that, it really works. But it's almost like it's almost like this battle where it's like, yeah, I know, like nutrition, for example, I know to eat right. I know what I should eat, but I'd rather do this because it's easier and more convenient. But in the end,
right.
That convenience pays a price. And I think it's the same thing here when you're talking about structure and, that family dynamic kind of starts to fracture a little bit, right?
I think that's an excellent example, what you just said. You're right. We as humans and parents tend to we just do what's easiest instead of really putting the child first and knowing that, and this is an important thing, the consistency, where we might have a great schedule and a great structure going on, but the first time we're inconsistent, it's going to take that child 10 times more to be able to come back into that structure. So you actually have to work 10 times harder to make, to bring them back in there. And that when you experience that a couple times, you begin to realize, if I can just stick with this is going to pay off later. And, we're not perfect, so we're going to make mistakes and stuff's going to happen, of course. But if we can keep that overall function, and I used to fight a lot of structure myself. Just, I'm kind of a free and, wild thing, or was. So I really fought it in the classroom as a teacher at first, until I realized that if I build enough structure in my classroom, then with that structure staying in place, I actually have more freedom to do things kind of off the cuff, because I actually had a structure to work within. And so within the structure, I could have that little sense of freedom and go with the flow, kind of thing.
That's fascinating. 2 days ago, I just heard this quote about a musician was work. It said, you have to work to learn that song so that you can improvise.
Yeah,
exactly. That's perfect. Yeah, that's perfect.
That's fantastic. And I think that's the beauty of what you've created with DeeperDive Learning is you have a structure for them to work from, and there's also accountability, but there's enough creativity where they're not just kind of just doing multiple choice questions. And you guys, exactly. I think you said there's 50 different ways to interact, right?
Yeah, 80 actually, but
80.
Yeah, there's so many different ways, and you're right. So it's not canned. it is creative. They get to upload things. They get to, do things that make it personal, and they get to jump around. That was one of the things that was my pet peeves. Was I wanted to be able to appeal to that person with ADHD, you know, do the
Yeah,
thing
we're
down
not.
here. And
Yeah, or even to work
maybe,
on maybe an issue that's happening in the moment.
right, exactly. I want to go right here. I don't want to learn about that right now. In order to finish, they have to do it all. But, it's meant to be flexible enough that they can do it the way they need it. And that's what we wanted.
Excellent.
That's what you need. Family, parent. You dove right to the basis of it. Is that there has to be some kind of flexibility, or it's just not going to work.
Absolutely. And it's the same thing with our adults. Our teachers are the same way. They want that flexibility too.
Sure.
So
yeah.
where do you, what's your intention with Deeper Dive Learning from, for the future, the next year or so, next year, 3 years? What's the plan?
Well, we are growing. We are growing quickly, and I'm excited about that. So we really want to get this out to as many parents as possible. We made sure that it was cost effective so that really any parent could interact and do this. And that's really the main thing. I was actually in a school district yesterday, and I talked with a lady who was purchasing all of Family U for the whole entire district. And one of the first things they're going to do next week, and this is a small district, there's only 3 schools, so they're rural. But one of the things they were going to do right away is they're going to gather all the community stakeholders. So they're gathering together the mayor, the police force, all the social service people involved in that community, doctors, all kinds of people are invited to this meeting. And they're going to explain and show Family U and say, look, you guys, we all have a part in this. And so if you can promote it with the parents that you work with, we all work together. We're a community system here. And so everyone really has access to this now. And that way we can really get the families involved. And, one of the interesting things about family engagement, and this is something I didn't realize till just a few years ago, there was actually a meta-regression analysis, which is really just looking at a whole bunch of studies. And it was related to dropout prevention. And they discovered that the second most important element to keeping kids in school was family engagement.
Wow.
Yeah.
Really, I mean,
it was family engagement can make such a huge difference that it was over and above even some other things like college and career readiness or mentoring, behavior things, and there's a whole list of things below it. But family engagement is so important, and we have lots of studies that show that the more families are involved, the better chance those students have of graduating on time. And it makes that much of a difference.
One of our guests, Gail Moyers, came on a few weeks ago, and she was talking about a Harvard study that was talking about language and how language develops so much better when you have families eat together. So that dinner table conversation and the vocabulary, and I'm sure you're familiar with the study. And it's the same exact concept. You get the family together, get them engaged, be more present, be more, have that structure so that you can have the flexibility, like you said. Some really great stuff here. I'm hoping that, we can continue our conversation on different topics because you're a wealth of knowledge.
Meaning we'd love to have you back.
Exactly.
But yeah, I mean, you put together, like I said, I like the idea that under Family U, that town kind of coming together, or the district kind of welcoming the town to be a part of it, and kind of having them as as a family as well. It's that kind of statement of it takes a village, but it's the truth is to have buy-in from everyone.
Exactly. And I love that study about the families at dinner time. We actually have a couple videos in several of our courses that talk about that very study. and how important that is.
Full circle.
Yep.
Perfect.
Nice.
And it's important to note that you guys built out your own infrastructure. So you did the technology behind the whole program, right?
That's correct. And I have a partner as well in DeeperDive Learning, and she was really the tech end. She spent 30 years really in the classrooms teaching teachers how to use technology in the classroom. So, but she and I collectively, have about 60 years in education. And so what we knew what wasn't working, and we know what districts need, and we know what schools need. We know what principals need, teachers, and ultimately parents. And so we wanted to build something that really met those needs. And so that's kind of how that evolved. And so we hired our programmers and got started. And I did want to say too that all of our courses are translated easily in 80 different languages, and they work well with the screen reader. So that means the parent can set a screen reader to whatever language, and it'll read out loud in that language.
Wow.
Yeah, I saw that demo, Brian. It was impressive.
Cool.
I mean, they literally clicked a button and boom, it was in a different language.
Yep.
It wasn't just like wait a while. It was a matter of,
Sure.
It was instant. Yeah,
Sure.
I thought that was fantastic.
Yeah, that's really cool. Nice.
Good stuff.
Okay, well, look, we've kind of spoke offline, and then you're going to, give any folks who are listening, the opportunity, to buy the programs through a special link. We'll have in the show notes and in the promotions through social media. And we'll have a unique URL or code that they can put in and, get a small discount, but also, get access to all of this great, training that you have available.
Absolutely. So a lot of our courses are available online at our website at DeeperDiveLearning.com. And we have a store there. And so if you go to the store, they would just go to Family U, and they'll see some courses come up. And we continue to add certain ones in there so that they should check back frequently, because we probably release one every other month.
Okay.
A new
Excellent.
one. Mm-hmm.
Nice. Okay. Well, we will
Good
definitely, like I said, we'll have that kind of access. That's why it pays to subscribe to our podcast and become part of our group here. And then we'll definitely have more information on how to kind of access that small discount and, get to the website and these show notes. But we really appreciate the time. And I think this is one of many to come of, having you on our podcast.
I would love to. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Dr. Pam. We'll talk to you soon.
All right. Thanks a lot. Take care, you guys.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode of the Sound Foundations for Parenting podcast with your hosts, Darren and Brian. Find them on social media at Sound Foundations for Parenting. And if you enjoyed today's episode, please leave a review and subscribe. And we'll catch you next time on the Sound Foundations for Parenting podcast.